Hey guys, what's up? It's Johnny here, and welcome to another episode of the SIC Show. And I'm here with my bro, Brent. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, man, I'm so inspired by talking to Colby.
I know. I tell you what, this week we're interviewing Colby Brown, the legendary, the extraordinary, the wonderful Colby Brown, and he's going to share with us what his ink means to him.
And he's going to inspire us. I'm actually taking my hat off. An emotional image from Africa.
Absolutely epic image. And he's also going to give you the top 5 photography destinations that you need to add to your bucket list.
I've added 5 to mine.
Yeah, me too. Let's get into it.
Enjoy.
The SIC Show. Share, inspire, create.com. Share.
All right, Colby. Share something with us that people don't know about you, brother.
Yeah, sure. I think, when we started thinking about this podcast and you guys approached me for this, I tried to think of something that was quite unique. For me, I think it's actually my tattoos. So it's kind of hard, I guess, to see a little bit. I have Africa here with the words Ubuntu underneath it. Over here on this arm, it's actually the Tibetan Buddhist mantra, the Buddhist prayer, Om Mani Padme Om, and I actually have a bunch of others on the rest of my body, which I probably am not going to strip down for you guys just yet. To me, tattoos are quite important for a number of different reasons. One is they're permanent reminders, and number 2 is it kind of helps. It helps bring me back to reality. So for me, having Africa and Ubuntu, which means mercy or family, on my arm, reminds me of priorities and principles of what's important to me. And the same thing goes for every different tattoo that I have. It has a very specific meaning and has a very specific purpose of why I got it. It's interesting to think about tattoos because a lot of people are just like, oh, I'm gonna get the Chinese word for my name on it, or like stuff like that, which is perfectly fine. I mean, it's self-expression, but for me, it's definitely much more on a personal nature. It's kind of interesting, actually, for Christmas this year, for the holidays, I asked my wife, I don't want anything, because I don't need anything, but I asked her to design a new tattoo for me for our son, because I don't have anything on my body that signifies my little boy. He's 3 years old, and I'd love to have something that when I'm traveling, which I do quite frequently, that reminds me of him. So that's what she's working on now. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Which was your first tattoo, Colby?
Oh, my first tattoo. I think it might have been one of my shoulder ones. This is like 4 different hands holding each other, different skin tones, and then in between, in the middle of it, is it's an inverted tree. So it's like a tree that's light on the top and dark on the bottom, basically signifying like both unity and the importance and significance of nature. I think that's one of the first ones. Although I think that was actually a touch-up. It was one of those. It was. I've had them. I think I started doing when I was 18, so it's been quite a long time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can so relate to that story because I have a few tattoos too, and one of my big ones is it actually says "Love Never Dies" across my chest. It's in gangster writing, Kobe. Gangster writing.
I like it.
But actually, that's the last 3 words in a Bible verse that my dad read to me the night that he went to hospital before he passed away a few days later. So,
wow.
I mean, and I was 10 years old. So, I mean, and I totally can relate to exactly what you're saying. That's the reason all my tattoos, probably don't have as many as you, but I got a few. They all have some significance to me. It's not just some random set of aces or a joker head. Or a skeleton.
You might really love poker, man. It's all good.
Yeah, that's it. Well, if you're into poker, man, that's all good, man. But,
it's good. Awesome. It's good to have reminders of the importance or significance of either life events or experiences, or just ideas or passions. And I think that's how I treat my body in terms of the tattoos. I feel it's a canvas, and the same thing I do with photography. Like I want to have something. I want it to be significant. So.
Totally, and I think that's what life's all about. We're here for such a short time that. It's about your passion and what you believe in that actually makes up life. It's not all the day-to-day stuff that you're doing.
It's
actually, it's your passion.
Yeah, that's it.
Absolutely. Awesome. And it's beautiful is that it's subjective. It's different for everyone. There's no right answer, and so it's whatever works for you is the right way to do it. So.
Yeah.
Epic. Awesome, man.
Colby, thanks for sharing that with us. Awesome.
Epic share, brother.
Inspire.
Okay, Colby, inspire us with one of your awesome images.
Yeah, happy to do so. So a lot of photographers around the world know me for my landscape and my travel work, which is great. I definitely love doing that. But I'm also quite passionate about my humanitarian work. It's actually why I started the company called The Giving Lens, which is essentially a humanitarian-focused company organization that works on blending photo education with support for sustainable development initiatives. So we travel to different countries around the world, and we find ways to learn through photography while helping a specific cause. And the image that I'm sharing with you guys today is actually of a little boy in an orphanage that I took in Tanzania a year ago. And essentially, we were there for a TGL trip. We actually ran 2 back-to-back. And one of the different places that we visited was this one orphanage outside of the Serengeti. And it was a really unique and surreal experience to spend time with these individuals and with these kids and these. A lot of the time it was these women that were running these type of orphanages or smaller schools to really get a chance to understand their challenges and kind of what they have to go through their daily life. And so we were able to bring our people, our participants from around the world, came in here. They learned a lot about both photography, about the challenges facing Tanzanians. And then at the end of the day, we're also able to donate back to these organizations, which is really great. It's kind of a really important part of the model we do at TGL. So this image with this little boy, as we went into the small schools in rural Tanzania, really kind of remote out there, and I just really connected with this one boy. We didn't speak. I don't speak Swahili. He didn't speak English. But it was one of those moments where I think anyone that actually travels can understand when you kind of meet that eye contact with an individual and you just know there's some sort of connection there. Like as soon as I walked into the room, like his eyes were on me, and I just kept looking at him, and I was photographing a couple of the other kids as we were talking to the teacher and to the head of the orphanage and everything that was going on, and I kept coming back to this one kid, and so I figured that I had to find a way to encapsulate what was drawing me into him and kind of his story and his flight, and capture that sense of not only that sense of challenge of what these kids are facing, but also the sense of hope. I think that's kind of also important when it comes to travel photography, and especially humanitarian. It's so easy to take, not easy, it's so commonly done to take pictures of individuals that are, it just paints a very horrific story, and sometimes that's what needs to be told, but a lot of the time there's a lot of good, there's a lot of hopefulness and perseverance and all this positive energy out there as well, and I think it's important to document that when it's relevant. And so for this, that's what I did. I kind of got down really low. I was actually doing a campaign for Phase 1 at the time, so I was using an IQ 260 at the time. And I got down super low, and he was fixated on me, and because the light was coming in from the side window, and I wasn't using a flash at the time, and we had a couple other photographers and other people photographing, I basically used his fixation on me as an individual to kind of move closer towards the window, which allowed the light to hit his face right, because normally when I was facing him directly, it was all pure side light, so only half his face was in. So I was able to use the situation and the connection I had with this young boy, as well as the natural scenery and the natural light that was coming in, to capture a what I feel is a very compelling and one of my favorite images actually of my time in Tanzania, of this little boy sitting there. And so it's kind of dear to my heart, and I always love talking about it, and love this image specifically. So.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, and I get that exact same feeling. You know, you can see the adversity, but you can see the hope. There's almost a half grin there. You know, like it's like a flat half grin, and those eyes, and yeah, I totally get that same sense from that image as well. And you're so right. Often you see the very worst of a situation. You know, because that can be easy to capture, you know, but when you're in that sort of environment and you can bring home an image like this, I think I totally agree. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I love it, especially the way you've used the light, Colby, and the background. You know, like the way you've got lower than his eyes or equal to his eyes, so you're not actually shooting down at him and he's looking up at you as a superior person.
Yeah. So
you got down to his level, you photographed him, he's looking out the window. I love the way that his hands are out of focus. He's obviously using a very shallow depth of field, a wide open aperture, and also the way the blue in the background and the red goes away from where he's looking. And there's another kid in the background there that's blurred. It looks like a schoolroom or a classroom or something, and then there's a little bit of a window in the background too. Amazing image. It tells like.
It does. It tells
such a story.
Yeah, and that's a good tip, guys. You know, like the background of this image and the background of your image, particularly like this, it's so very, very important. You know, and this image, it just tells you so much, not only from the young boy who's the focus, but his environment around him. You know, it's amazing. It's
absolutely
environmental portraiture.
That's it.
Yeah, I love doing environmental portraiture like that. You know, where you tell a story by having someone in their natural environment.
Yeah,
For sure.
That's great.
I think it makes it's a challenge. I mean, but it makes such a difference, as I think both of you guys know. I mean, it's one thing to take a headshot, which I think can be very powerful, especially if you can connect with someone's eyes. But I think that doing the environmental portraiture and being able to use, as you guys just talked about, use like the colors in the background. That's to me the blue and the red. That to me has also helped make this image contrasted to the beautiful light skin, mocha skin tone of his face. Like all the different pieces kind of came together, and it wasn't. It's interesting from a travel photographer's perspective because you are in essence in scenes like this taking almost a street photographer's approach, because you don't have the ability a lot of the times, whether it's because of verbal limitations or just situational awareness, is that you don't have the ability to move things around or to say, hey, can you go here and you do this? Like you can't fake it. And so you have to use what you have, and sometimes it all just comes together. And the challenge as a photographer is noticing when it does or when it isn't, and try to get to where it is, and then capture that one moment. Because the second after this, the kid came back and was looking back at me, or maybe he was off somewhere else. And so it's that one moment, and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting, and you're like, that's it, and then you grab it.
Yeah.
I think patience is really key with photography for all different genres. Something that was a hard lesson to me to learn early on as well.
Definitely. I don't think just waiting for that moment, hoping it's going to happen, and then capturing it. Hey, Colby, just a couple of technical questions. You said you're using, was it a phase 1 camera? And what kind of lens? Was it a prime lens or a zoom?
Yeah, it was a prime lens. So at the time, I was using a Schneider 35mm, which on a medium format is kind of like a little over a 50mm. So it's kind of like my favorite portrait lens, or portrait millimeter range for the most part. Generally, it's either 45 to 55, or if I'm going higher than that, then I like to be like 90 to 110. It really depends on how much separation I want or compression I want between my subject and the background. And so for this, it was. I mean, Schneider and of course Phase 1 with their medium format they're just ridiculously sharp if you kind of nail it right. It's challenging to use in situations like this because a lot of the medium format cameras are not built for life on the road or like challenging, dirty situations like working in dusty environments. But when you do nail it, I mean, some of the images I got from Tanzania are just the details between the glass of the Schneider and the dynamic range of the medium format they're unparalleled. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, awesome. And what aperture were you shooting? Can you remember? Was it 2.8 or? This
one I believe was 2.8.
Okay.
It was I can actually double check for you guys. I have it right. I have the shot right, or I had the shot. Let me look.
Okay. That's
it's a good question. I actually should have had it beforehand.
That's right.
No, that's
we can't all remember exactly when we shot
every photo we've ever taken.
We do it live. Okay, so it is 2.8, 1/50th of a second, ISO 200.
Yeah, you nailed it, man.
Yeah.
How many frames did you get of him at that exact moment?
I think overall, because of the slowness of the medium format, I only was grabbing like a frame or two a second, and so for me it was I have 7 or 8 that I was really happy with throughout the 5-minute span of the section. But as I was saying, like scenes like this, and generally in photography, I'm a very selective shooter, so I don't like to. A lot of time I don't use high frame rates unless I'm doing like wildlife photography. So I'll be very particular, and I'll be waiting for it to be right, or hopefully I'll notice when it's not going to happen or not going to be right, and I'll try to get the best out of the situation rather than just focus on trying to get that utopian ideal of what I think it should look like. So.
And I really love that tip, Colby, where you said he was focused on you, so you moved towards the light to get him to look towards the window. And I bet that exact moment, I bet you were lucky to get 2 or 3 frames, where he's looking up at the light like that, if you were lucky.
Absolutely.
Like, just amazing capture. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thanks for inspiring us, Colby.
Oh, for sure. My pleasure. Yeah.
Create.
All right, Colby, show us something you create with, brother.
Not a problem. So for a lot of people out there that know who I am, know that I, for the last 9 years, have been a Canon photographer. I've been shooting Canon. There was a small stint where I shot both Canon and Nikon 2 years ago, but I ended up going back to Canon. Long story short, in the last year and a half, things have changed in the technology industry, and I am actually now sponsored by Sony. I made the switch over initially without sponsorship, but because I was tired of carrying around such heavy gear. As you guys know, I work in a lot of environments that are off the grid in the Himalayas and Patagonia in the middle of Africa, and carrying around 45 pounds or 18 kilos is just it gets old pretty quickly. You guys know doing video work, like it's not. You guys have it worse than I do, and I was still complaining.
Dude, my pack tops over 25 kilos when it's full with water, food. Like I don't know what that is in pounds, man, but yeah,
it's a lot.
It's a lot. It gets heavy, man.
Absolutely. And so I wanted something different, and I think until Sony started coming out with some of their bodies, which I have here, and I'll show you guys in a second. Until they started coming out with this stuff in the last year and a half, there was always that trade-off going mirrorless, where you wanted a lighter setup, you wanted lighter lenses, you wanted to save weight, but a lot of the time it meant that you were sacrificing. It meant that you were sacrificing image quality or dynamic range or ISO sensitivity or whatever it is. And Sony's been so innovative lately with what they're doing with their sensors and their technologies and their features that I was just blown away. And so I made the switch over. I bought a couple of their stuff, and then I went full on about a year ago. So now I'm fully sponsored by them. So the main cameras that I have, I'll share with you guys really quickly. So we'll actually start at the smaller end. So this right here, this big bad boy, this is the Sony a6000. So this is actually a crop sensor, but it shoots 11 frames per second, has autofocus points that cover, I think it's about 94% of the entire viewfinder, of your entire frame, which is quite amazing. And it does a wonderful job. I throw telephotos lenses on this one. I use it for wildlife. For such a small body, it is incredibly powerful. And at least in U.S. dollars, this thing is, I think it's like $600 or less. I bet it on sale for Black Friday for like $445 or something like that. It was ridiculous. So amazingly powerful camera, super small.
What's the autofocus like on that, Colby? Especially when you're photographing wildlife and things are walking towards you or running or moving.
Yeah, so out of all the Sony systems that are out right now, it probably has the most robust. The new A7 Mark II that is just coming out next week with its 5-axis stabilization might be a little bit better in terms of how it handles a little bit lower light with autofocus tracking. But for this, because it covers so much of your frame and because of the system that it's using on a crop sensor, the autofocus is actually awesome. So I can sit there and track like my son running across the room or a hyena squirting across. Like it's truly amazing for such a small body. I don't want to sit there and say that it's going to give you the exact same autofocus as like a 1DX or a D4, both that are $6,000 bodies. But you're talking, if you could think about that in terms of like steps of quality, maybe think about like a step down from that, like just a small step down. And for $600, like it's kind of a no-brainer. It's really impressive.
I don't know what that is. That's like about 8th the price or 12th the price. That's crazy, man.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
Yeah, no, you go, bro.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I was blown away. When it first came out, I heard good reviews, and I finally got my hands on one, and I was like, I've used it for a couple of my last marketing campaigns, even just as a second body, and it's like it's amazing. Like the image quality is great. I'll talk a little bit about the differences between the A7, which is the next series up here in 2 seconds. But for a crop sensor body, for how small and lightweight it is, like I can't recommend it enough for people getting into mirrorless. It's a great entry level.
I want one, and that testimonial about the focus. That's one thing I've heard a lot about the mirrorless is focus. They struggle with focus, and for you to say you shoot wildlife with that thing with a $600 body, that's just amazing.
That's great, and I get a lot of people ask me, which camera should I get for Christmas, or I want to take photos, and I'm saying, well, probably go with the mirrorless because Colby recommends them. And I say the Sony's really good, and there's a couple of others, but
yeah, for sure.
I always put I always say, well, I've tried a couple and the autofocus isn't that great, but I guess I'm comparing it against my 5D Mark III or whatever. So, yeah, but that's great. I'd love to try that, Colby. So, yeah, keep talking.
No, absolutely. No, you're spot on. I mean, like I said, historically there's been a difference, and I think, I think this gives you as close to DSLR autofocus as you can get right now with mirrorless. In terms of, Fuji's doing good stuff as well as Olympus in terms of this type of stuff, but a lot of it, again, coming back to it, technology just wasn't there yet. So I think this is the first generation where you're starting to see it, get really, really close to the top end stuff, and probably on par, aligned with some more of the mid to upper level stuff rather than just the top professional stuff. But I'm calling it right now. 2015 is going to be the year of mirrorless. Between all the different camera manufacturers, I really think that as soon as we start seeing the challenges of autofocus and autofocus tracking and accuracy, which I think is the only thing that are holding some photographers back, the sports and wildlife photographers, as I like to broadly swap that group in. I really think next year you're going to see that diminish, and essentially it's going to be an even playing field. And at that point, at least in my mind, I don't see why anyone would want to carry around, 5 times as much weight as well as, 3 times the amount of price when you can get something that gives you just as good results, if not better, which I'll talk about just in a second now.
Awesome.
So A6000, perfect, great frames per second, good autofocusing. The next are the A7 series. So these 2 bodies, this is the A7S, and this is the A7R. So what Sony's done is they've broken down their camera lineup into the A7 series is their kind of somewhat professional level mirrorless cameras, and they're based on their feature sets is how they determine their different model lines. So the S for the A7S stands for sensitivity. So this thing has great autofocus in low light, probably the best out of any digital SLR. Like, it's just insane what it can focus on. It does only shoot 12 megapixels. It's kind of built a little bit more so as a video camera. A lot of people use that because of the S for sensitivity. Now, what I mean when I say that is that this camera can shoot effectively about 20,000 ISO to be the same or equivalent as 3200 ISO on your top-end digital SLRs. It is quite ridiculous what you can. I've taken photos of this with 50,000 ISO, and with post-processing cleanup, it's still like incredibly useful, like clean images. So wow, it is unbelievable what they've done with sensor technology for ISO sensitivity with this. I use it on any of the trips I'm going where I'm doing like astro work, or it's like working in the Northern Lights. I want to do that type of stuff. This thing always comes around with me. It's there's nothing on the market in any spectrum at any price point that competes with it. So at ISO sensitivity.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
I mean, you can photograph someone with a single candle. Then like in a dark room, you can have a candle light them. Or even an iPhone screen.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's truly amazing what you can do with it. And yeah, I mean, for video work, it's been like there's some bunch of videos out there by Philip Bloom and a couple other people where he shows you the capabilities of what you can do with this. Essentially, it's like night vision, but with all like natural color. It's unbelievable what you can get away with.
And
so,
is it 1080 or is that one 4K?
This one shoots at 4K. It shoots 4K, but there's a caveat. It doesn't shoot 4K to the internal reader, so you actually have to have it connect to an external like hard drive or system for it to shoot 4K. Okay. Otherwise, it does 1080p at the standard sizes depending on the region that you're in. So,
awesome.
But yeah, definitely pretty cool with that. And then the next one, the one that I use probably most often because I do so much landscape and travel work, is the A7R. So the R stands for resolution. S is sensitivity, R is resolution. Essentially what you have in this is a souped-up D800E or D10 sensor. So it's shooting at 36 megapixels. There's no AA filter. It has the highest dynamic range of any non-medium format body, which is again on par with about probably the D10 right now from Nikon. In such a small compact body, super sharp. Incredible camera. Autofocus isn't nearly as good as the A7S or the A6000, but if you're doing things where you're shooting from a tripod or you're shooting in situations that are a little bit more controlled, I use it for all my landscape work outside of probably the big night stuff. Then you want to use something like this. And it's actually kind of interesting because I'm in the middle of a catalog or a photo library rehaul. So I've been looking at my stuff and all the work that I'm doing, and I wanted to rethink how I organize everything, how I have everything set up in Lightroom in terms of catalogs or in terms of smart folders or filters and all this other stuff. So I've been going back through a lot of my old stuff, and in doing so, I've been finding a lot of images that haven't been edited from years ago that I still could do some really great stuff with. I can either sell it or use it to market my books or marketing campaigns or whatever it is. And essentially going back and re-editing some of those older files. And we're talking about stuff that is, maybe back to like the Canon 5D Mark II days, all the way through the 5D Mark III and the 1DX, as well as the year that I did the D800 and the 1D Mark IV, or no, D800 and the D4. And all of those images, like, pale in comparison to the amount of data that I'm getting out of a single shot of this. Like, if I compare a single shot of this to like a 5D Mark III, it's night and day. It's really crazy to see like how much details I can pull out of the shadows, how much detail I can pull back from highlights, and it's it's interesting to think about it because so many photographers these days are trying to come back to that's not about the gear, it's not about the gear, and that's true. I mean, so much of it about creativity and what you do with it. However, with stuff like this, it really opens up doors that we didn't have possible. Or like a really easy example is I used to, like on a 5D Mark III, I'd do like maybe a 5-shot or a 7-shot bracket if I was going to do like a blended image for like a landscape. With this, maybe I'm using 2, max 3 images for a blend. And sometimes that's just too much. Like there's too much detail for me when I'm editing. I have to actually like pull it down. I'm like, no, I don't want that much shadow detail. Like get out of here. Like this is not what I want. Like I need it to be more realistic because it's just capturing so much stuff.
Yeah.
So it's been a really fun switch over to Sony because of this technology. That's why I chose Sony over Fuji or over Olympus. They are all great systems. They all have their pros and their cons. But to me, the sensor technology specifically, right now, Sony is knocking it out of the park and blowing everyone away. And the stuff that they have coming out next year is only going to continue that fold. And so it's really interesting. It's really great for me to have, the weight of my bag is half of what it used to be, and I'm not giving up anything. I'm not giving up sensitivity. I'm not giving up autofocus performance. I'm not any of this stuff. I feel my work is actually better now because I'm not so held down by either the weight or the extra stuff that I always had to carry around with the digital SLR stuff. So to me, it's been great, and I look forward to seeing others try it.
That's great, man. The bodies sound awesome, but tell us a little bit about the Sony lenses. I mean, and how you find them and what you recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, moving to the Sony system for the full frame bodies, it's the FE line. For the standard, like the A6000, it's actually the E line, is generally the native lenses. Now, the benefit between the two is that the E and the FE mounts are actually the same mount. It's just the FE are built for full frame, and the E mounts are built for crop sensors. It's kind of like the EF and the EFS for Canon, to use it as a comparable analogy. And so what they've done is the E mount has been around for a while. It's what they used to use in the NEX series before that turned into the Alpha series. It's now all under the Alpha line. And the A7 series is actually relatively new, so it's only been out since last November, or 2 Novembers ago. So not just a month ago, but a year and a half ago, or a year and a quarter ago. And so the lens lineup now, they just came out with the 16-35 f4, now has all your main staples in terms of your 16-35, 70-200, 24-70, a 55, a 35, and they have a kit lens, a 28-70, and then they're also coming out with a macro lens. So you have a good variety of the standard lenses, but it's still missing some of the more precise stuff, some of the specialized, I guess, more accurately. Like I still hold on to my Canon tilt shifts because Sony doesn't offer anything with that. Now the benefit of going to a Sony system compared to the other mirrorless options is that these you can purchase lens adapters for all of them. So when I first bought into the Sony system, I was like, this is what I want to try, but they didn't have everything that I wanted in terms of lenses. I bought a Metabones adapter, and basically allowed me to use all of my Canon lenses on this body. And the same thing happens for Nikon. You can even use Leica. You can use like almost any type of lens that you can think of, you can use on these bodies. And so there's some limitations sometimes. Sometimes the autofocus becomes slow. Sometimes it's just manual focus or so these little different pieces and these caveats. But just the ability that you can port over at least some of your glass, I think really makes a big difference. And so that's what I did initially is the hybrid, and now I'm aside from those tilt shifts, I'm full into Sony. My favorite 2 lenses right now are pretty much the lenses I use most often, and that's the 16-35 f4 FE that just came out, super sharp, great lightweight lens, and then the 70-200 f4, which again is just, it's a beautiful lens. It's not too big, it's pretty light, and takes just really sharp images. And I use those 2 more than anything else out there. So
yeah, I guess that's the 80-20 rule. You probably use 20% of your lenses 80% of the time. When I first became a professional photographer, I only had 2 lenses, similar to you, Colby. I had the 17-40 and I had a 70-200, and I actually ran my business for 3 years just with those 2 lenses, the landscapes and portraits.
Yeah, that's
pretty easy. That's all you needed.
That's it. Oh, that's great to hear they've got a full range out now. Could we hurry up and finish the podcast? I've got to get on Amazon and order some stuff.
I
know, man.
Connector. What's it called?
I don't know. The bare bones.
Bare bones,
connector.
okay.
Yeah, we'll put a link.
Metabones adapter for Canon, and then there's NovaFlex and a couple other ones if you're coming from Nikon or you need to do Leica. There's a couple of different posts out there and stuff like that for this type of stuff. Anyone's interested in the A7R, I did a pretty in-depth blog post or review on it on my blog, and then also for the 16 to 35 that just came out. Both of them give you tons of information, gives you raw images to play with, so that the people that are on the fence are like, I don't know, the quality's not there. I'm like, here's raw files, play with it, figure it out for yourself. It really, you'll see the difference. So
yeah, that's awesome, man.
So Colby, tell us a little bit about the giving lens first, and then second, I've got a second question for you, and I actually wrote it down there. I want to know what your favorite top 5 places you've been to, basically your bucket list of places that you've been to that I want to add to my bucket list. So first tell us about the Giving Lens.
Sounds good. Okay, so the Giving Lens, as we talked about a little bit before, is an organization that blends photo education with support for different causes around the world. So what we do is we take teams of photographers of various different skill sets to different generally developing countries where we partner with a local NGO, and half the time people are learning about photography, and the other half the time they're supporting that cause. That could be working with child education and teaching photography to kids. It could be working with elephants. It could be building a house. There's every trip is unique and different because we don't go into it with a mindset of this is what we do. We go into it with a mindset of how can we help. So when we reach out and we connect with these NGOs, it's like, what do you need, and which gaps can we help fill? We're going to naturally give. Every workshop is naturally a fundraiser, so we're naturally going to give thousands of dollars back to them from the proceeds of the workshop. So that's kind of a given. But in terms of our tangible time in these countries, we want to make sure that the experiences are unique and different for our participants, but meaningful for the people that we're working with. So every time we go through the process of setting up a new trip or doing something new out there in the world, we're doing it with a purpose. And so it's really interesting and unique. It's been around for 4.5 years now. Every year we run anywhere between 6 to 10 different workshops around the world, from places in Africa to India, Thailand, Nicaragua, Peru, all over the place. Pretty much every different cause you can think of. We're working constantly to expand that. We do a lot of work with youth education, with women's rights. We're doing more stuff with species preservation, clean drinking water projects these days. We're constantly in a state of evolution, trying to figure out how we can do what we're doing better, raise more money, and bring more awareness to these different causes that I think are quite important. So if you guys go to TGL or thegivingLens.com, there's plenty of information on there. We're also on every social network, and you might find a trip that you want, or maybe just want to help out, whatever it is. Feel free to reach out. But it's a project of mine that started just out of passion of wanting to give back, and it's kind of morphed and evolved into a living, breathing thing that's really doing a lot of good out there. So I'm very proud of it.
Awesome. I think the listeners should definitely get involved in that. Definitely. Absolutely. And your top 5 bucket list for places to go as a photographer.
Top 5. That's it. Okay. 5 is hard. I'm gonna try to do 5. Usually I can do 1 or 2, but we'll do 5. In no particular order, because I have to do it that way. Any other way would require too much thought. I don't think we have enough time. Okay. So in no particular order, I'd say Iceland, just beautiful for landscape work. If you love nature and stuff, the colors that you get out there, the pastels, absolutely glorious, truly amazing. Next up, I would probably say. I actually probably say in your guys' neck of the woods, one of my favorite national parks in the world is actually Cargini. So Cargini National Park in northern Western Australia, out by Parapadu, some of the most beautiful gorges in the world. Always love going out there and spending time. Really great to get out there and explore. Just some beautiful colors and reflections and emerald pools and all sorts of things you can think of. If you guys haven't got a chance to go out there, highly recommend doing it. Yeah, definitely high on the list. Third, in no particular order, I'd probably go ahead and add Patagonia. A little bit cliche, but again, landscape photography. There's really nothing like it. It is, I do a lot of work in the Himalayas, which I absolutely love, and might actually make my top 5 list for Nepal. But the Patagonia is much more accessible. So the mountains are much smaller, so you're not working at 20,000 feet or 6,000 meters. You're hiking in, yes, for a little bit, but it's not nearly the same. Where every time I go to Everest, it's like a 15-day hike in and hike out. This is hey, I can hike there in half a day, and I'm in these beautiful locations. So Patagonia is up there. I think one of my favorite places in the world as a continent is Africa, but to nail it down, I'd probably say Tanzania, the mixture between the cultural beauty of the Maasai, the warrior nomadic tribe, to just the Tanzanians themselves, and you also have the Serengeti. It's just kind of a really unique blend of all the things I love about travel, all encapsulated into one place. And then I think to round things out, I think I'm actually not going to say Nepal, although it is high on my overall list. I do recommend people go to that. But to whittle it down to 5, I'm actually going to go ahead and say the Canadian Rockies. I just got done doing 2 different big projects there this year, and it is truly one of the most beautiful mountain ranges in the world. And for it to be so close to the U.S., a lot of people don't realize that it's there. It's the same mountain range that goes down into Glacier National Park in northern Montana, and technically part of the Rockies that reach down here into my home state of Colorado. But just the sheer beauty of the mountains and the lakes and the backcountry, you have stuff that's super accessible right off the parkway, as well as you can go well into the backcountry and just literally find some of the most pristine, beautiful, rugged peaks with emerald crazy lakes and glacier fed stuff. Like, it is just a outdoor playground. So highly recommend Canadian Rockies.
Man, that's an epic top 5. I was going to say, I just added 4 onto my bucket list.
Oh, really?
Iceland was already there, man.
I've added 5.
Yeah.
I've been to the Colorado Rockies and in the US, but I've never been to the Canadian Rockies.
For sure.
And
Colorado Rockies are beautiful, but I really truly say, as a Colorado, well, I'm not. I guess I'm a native. Well, I'm not really native. I moved here from California ultimately.
Okay.
I love Canadian Rockies, but to me, the Colorado Rockies, the Canadian Rockies, there's just something I can't explain that is. To me, it gets up on par with like places in Patagonia. Like, there's literally stuff that is just that amazing. So highly recommend it.
Awesome.
Incredible. That's one hell of an incredible list.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Colby, for being on the show.
The last thing, did you want? I mean, Colby does so much training, and I know he has workshops all over the world.
Yes.
Did you want to give us, your 30-second spin on what you've got coming up next year in 2015, and where people can find that stuff, man?
Yeah, sure. So we talked a little bit about TGL, so go to thegivinglens.com. We have tons of workshops there. I'll be doing one in Ethiopia this summer, which is just about to be announced, which will be fun. The rest of them I have independent contractors running. Other professional photographers like Jay and Verena that I'm sure everyone here knows. As far as my own workshops, I have a handful that I do each year. Next year, the ones that I have coming up at the beginning of the year are actually Canadian Rockies in the wintertime, beautiful Abraham Lakes, ice bubbles, crazy blue ice, and then I'm doing one in Iceland for the Aurora Borealis and ice caves. And then things kind of take off from there, but I think those are probably the most upcoming ones that I'd recommend checking out. And to see any more information about that, it's just colbybrownphotography.com, and I have a section for workshops. You can check out that stuff, plenty of information, what they cost, what they involve, and you're also free to, of course, reach out, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome, Colby. Thank you so much for being on the show today, mate. You've got one hell of an amazing life.
Oh, wow.
Not so much travel, so much great photography, and man, epic. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Mate.
Oh, dude,
man.
I love talking to Colby, man. He's so inspiring and he's just so knowledgeable.
Oh, man, he's got so much information, and the dude has travelled so many places. How many times has he been to Iceland?
17?
Oh, I don't know, man. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's just, he just blows me away.
And to actually give us his top 5, and I think I kind of caught him a little bit unawares with that. I asked him live, like, give us your top 5, and then he's like, oh, okay.
No apparent order. Yeah. No apparent order. Big claws every time.
Yeah,
he was awesome, man. And I just love the way he gives back. The Giving Lens is just such an awesome project.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's just I don't know what to hang on to that coffee.
And guys, if you haven't got involved with your photography and actually give back in some way, I suggest you do. We do it through Help Portrait, which I started in my area, and actually that's how I kind of met Johny, and that's how we started the SIC show. Everything started from there. It was actually giving back to your community, and it's super important. Don't just think about what you can get from photography. Think about what you can give with your photography.
Yeah.
I'm getting tingles in the back of my neck. It really is, and it's a passionate thing for me too. So, if you guys want to jump onto the Giving Lens, see if you can go to one of these workshops and actually help local people with your photography skills.
Yeah, it's awesome. I really love the idea of giving back. And I mean, the culture these days is so much to take. What can I get for me? And to have that mindset where you start to give back, you'll be surprised how many doors that'll open for you. Basically, people will start to see that you're a giver, and they'll want to work with you and they'll want to be around you, and you'll start to draw people into your circle who think that way, and I tell you, the possibilities are endless. Absolutely endless.
Your life has changed after
well, the last 12 months, it's been, you know, I went there and did the videography for Help Portrait, and I met my partner, and we're having a baby, and we moved in together, and we're getting married, and I got a new job. We started the SIC show. We started filming, you know, around the world with Jay and Verena. It's just my life from that one little time I gave. It's just everything has changed from that point. It's just amazing, and you know, and I've always had that mindset of being able to, how can I help? You know, people ring me up, I need a hand with this and that, and you just give them a hand, and I tell you what, it
comes back to you. It comes back to you. Like,
takes my breath away.
Tenfold.
Yeah, awesome. And that portrait Colby took in Africa, that little boy, and that's what, you know, I love so much, that the fact that it's so easy to capture the negative, you know, people in pain or people struggling, but you could tell by the environment that, you know, he was in a classroom, and it was, you know, there was a harsh environment that the portrait was taken, but you see on the little boy's face, there's just a little smirk, and the way his eyes are looking up to that light, you know, there's hope there.
I love it, and as photographers, guys, you know, you may be not working for a newspaper. Newspapers need to sell, so they need graphic images to actually sell newspapers. But as a photographer, you've got the choice. Do you want to portray the negative, or do you want to portray the positive, the hope? And I love the way Colby chose to portray the hope, because in some of these countries, people are really struggling. I mean, they're struggling just to eat every day. And I come from Africa, and I know what it's like. And to actually portray hope is incredible. Love it.
And he's so inspiring, guys. If you haven't checked out any of Colby's work, his workshops, his ebooks, God knows, the list is this long. I don't know, it must be 4 Colbys. He's got 4 Colbys.
Well, he's got his hands in every single pie.
I think there's 4 Colbys. He's cloned. It's got to be.
It's got to be,
But anyway, he's an incredible guy, guys. And thanks for watching this show. It's been another epic interview with Colby this week. And guys, as always, leave us some comments on iTunes. We love the comments on iTunes. It really helps with ranking in the show on iTunes.
And I'm going to try and get one of those Sony cameras, man. I want to give it a try. But anyway, actually, Sony, if you're watching this, my address will be below. Just send it to me.
Here's the address. Here's the link. Anyway.
Awesome, buddy. Well, thank you guys for watching. Leave us comments below. This is Brent. Have an awesome day.
Yeah, this is Johnny. Take care and have an awesome week.
To find out more, go to shareinspirecreate.com.